Hi, everybody. Welcome to season 3, episode 1 of Fabulously Candice. Oh, wow. It has been a wild ride the last couple months, but here we are in a brand new season, and I have the most beautiful human next to me, my husband, my partner, my soulmate, Chris Kishiyama.
Sweetheart.
Hi, babe.
Hi.
I love that we're sitting so close right here like this. So Chris joined me when we first started the podcast a few years ago. Chris and I were doing it together. And then as our lives and our healing center really evolved, we've gotten more, we call it blooming. We're blooming, more abundant in our time. And so I took over the podcast. We decided at the end of last year, though, because there has been such a need and demand for us to talk more about our relationship and couples work, that we're going to have Chris on more. So first, I'd like to just brag about you for those that may not have exposure to you.
Okay.
So Chris Kishiyama is a BIPOC human, so Lakota, Hawaiian, Japanese, such beautiful cultures. And he's also retired law enforcement, spent 20 years serving our community, and is a survivor of post-traumatic stress, so an environmental neurodifference. And in 2019, I had begged and begged, actually it was 2018, begged and begged and begged for him to leave he had taken on a position and was traveling a lot. It was very stressful, and begged him to come on board to Namaste Center for Healing. And so, yeah, I just love that we get to live out our purpose of helping people heal on so many levels at our center. So I just want to welcome you back.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been quite the experience, getting to see you grow and evolve, and just thinking back,
us grow
and evolve. And you as my partner, as my wife, it's been such a joy to see you evolve in such a unique and beautiful way, not just as a human being, but is a person that has a spotlight on you globally, to see and hear people call in from all over the world, to see the messages and the emails and everything of just people giving thanks and asking questions.
They do that with Chris too, just so you know. He actually does coaching calls with people literally all over the world. So to where he'll do some calls at like 6:30 in the morning or 7, because across the world it's a decent time for other neurodifferent people. So yeah. So I just really appreciate you coming back on. And we do have earlier podcasts, the first season where we are on and we talk a lot, and people will say, yeah, I was just listening to you and Chris talk about this or that. And so I thought it would be great to have you on first episode, season 3, to kind of talk about, okay, 3 seasons later, what are we up to? Right.
Yeah. That's a great idea.
Yeah. And so I want to really start out by talking about what you do at Namaste, what you do at our healing center, because you do actually work with so many neurodifferent individuals, whether it's environmental neurodifference. You work with a lot of first responders who have environmental trauma, PTSD, but you also work with so many neurodifferent individuals, autistic, ADHD, ADD, and as well as parents of adult neurodifferent individuals, and partners and couples. So let's talk to the audience about how you transition, like what you're doing now with the psychoneuroimmunology, what that is, and then also your holistic medicine, your holistic healing.
Yeah, so I transitioned back to Namaste. Again, it was quite the transition, going from not just a law enforcement background, but consulting internationally and traveling, 90% of the year. It was a hard transition, but necessary. And coming back, you really encouraged me to just follow my heart and say, what do you want to do here? It's like, you can, if you just want to be in the back office and, run the business, more power to you. But if you want to do something that fulfills you, that really is meaningful, go for it. And so I literally had a dream, and I shared this with you, but I had a dream that I had remembered that when I was very young, I wanted to study medicine. Yeah.
Grandma Ada.
Yeah, there's a picture of my grandmother, Grandma Ada, that's above my desk. And for me, that's really where a lot of it starts, is to give back and to help people heal. I didn't ever want to go into allopathic medicine, traditional medicine, for my own reasons. There was a lot of drug abuse history in my family, and a lot of that started with prescription medication, and there's still trauma and tribulation with prescription medication in my family. And so I just didn't ever want to be a part of that in any way. And so having the ancestry that I do, I really want to honor that. And so,
well, your ancestry is Lakota, Hawaiian, and Japanese, which just so honor. So yeah, that holistic way of healing, right?
Yeah.
That Eastern philosophy and the natural medicines, the plant medicines, what Western medicine calls alternative healing, both of us have always been really drawn to.
Absolutely. And I think so many people, especially nowadays, are turning to these really original means of healing, right? Because that's what is old is new again. And I think that we're coming back to that. And so, yeah, I went back to school. I'm still in school, and hopefully I'm done within this next year. And but I'm getting my MD, my naturopathic medicine degree, and then also my PhD in psychoneuroimmunology. And that's kind of the intersection of psychology, neurology, and biology, right? And how that generates or creates sickness, whether it's physical, emotional, or psychological. And so looking at that area of study in everything we do, we see it manifest in every one of our clients. They'll come in with whenever it seems like wherever they come in, seeking to have help with, is never where we end up, right? And so that's just like one component. It's what gets them to find healing and assistance. And so once they come in, we always find out that there's gut biome issues, there's sleep dysregulation, there's food dysregulation, there are unhealthy relationships with a variety of different things in their world. So
well, and we can talk about those just in terms of, we're doing this web-based couples class for mixed neurotype, same neurotype couples right now. We talked about that last night, how especially, we know with the research on autistic children and adults, that there is a lot of gastrointestinal issues and autonomic nervous system dysregulation. We know with individuals who are ADHD, myself included, that emotional dysregulation is a primary trait. And then for folks who are schizoid, we know in the research that there is a more of a dorsal vagal response where there's more depression and a deep, extreme sense of loneliness, as well as alexithymia. So you're seeing our clients that you see actually quite a bit of our neurodifferent clients. And I want to talk about that in terms of what are some of the primary things that you do focus on with our neurodifferent clients that come in that are feeling stressed out, or, the adult parents with the adult child that say, like, we're struggling. What are some things that you do coaching around and guidance around?
Yeah, almost always the very first thing is normalizing, right? That just because someone is dysregulated or struggling with something doesn't mean that they're this unique unicorn that is the only person in the entire world that is experiencing this. And I understand why they feel that way, but helping them normalize their experience that, as an individual with PTSD, I have this regulation, and you could, look out the window and 99% of the people that are driving by or walking by would have dysregulation at some point in their day. And so moving to dysregulation, we really focus on polyvagal theory in the autonomic nervous system, really helping them understand what happens in their body, what happens in their brain when they go into fight or flight, and really how that manifests. Now, again, because everyone is a little bit different, the reaction to a trigger may present a little bit differently. But what we do know is that when someone is triggered, they have adrenaline. That's just period.
Well, and so I, being again autistic and ADHD, live more in sympathetic arousal, which would be fight or flight. So that constant feeling of anxiety or fawning, right? Trying to please people, trying to fit in, trying to figure it out. Those are all that sympathetic trauma response, right? So I would have, just by nature, this natural adrenaline flowing through me, even if it's low level. Is that
absolutely
okay?
Absolutely.
So if I don't do something with that, and then I'm on sensory overload, there's changes in my schedule throughout the day, maybe something happens at work, and then you and I interact, that is a recipe for disaster oftentimes.
Oh, for sure.
If I'm not finding a way to manage that.
100%. So I say this all the time. You must satisfy the biology before you can influence the psychology, right? And so this is kind of what we're talking about. We're having a trigger. The nervous system is moving us into sympathetic response, fight or flight. And we're having adrenaline introduced into our system. Adrenaline is go, right? It's all about the action and the movement. That's what it's designed to do. So think about it like this. If Candice has a sympathetic arousal, even if it's a low level drip all day long, right? Because of, the environment, sensory things, the business, sounds, what have you. Change, and you name it, right? Anything that influences this sympathetic activation, which is low level, constant drip all day long. It's no different than if I were following her around and kind of pushing her all day long, saying, go, go, go.
Oh, that sounds awful.
Yeah, like even sitting right here, just doing this podcast, if I was sitting here pushing on her saying, go, 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 you got to do something. I can only imagine how long that would last before you'd completely snap, right? You'd have a meltdown,
Which of course I would.
Of
I
course
think, you know what I mean?
Anybody would.
Yeah.
It's literally torture. Right? Literally. So think of it in that perspective through that lens.
But how am I guess for listeners, like, how a lot of people might say, but how do you become aware that you're triggered? Do you know what I mean? Like if I'm feeling triggered all day long, how do I kind of stop and have that awareness? What might you say to that?
Well, that's a common question that comes up, because most of the time when I'm first working with someone is they'll say, every time I work with someone, they'll say, well, how do you feel? And their common response is, I have no idea how I feel, because feel is generally associated only with emotion, right? And so they're searching for some descriptor of an emotion. And so I'll help them get back in their body, right? It's like,
so you're saying, how do you physically feel?
Yeah, I shifted to how to physically feel.
Which is great, because for those of us that are neurodifferent, how do you feel is just such a loaded question. For me, having alexithymia and feeling 1,000 things at once inside, I can't come up with a word. So I'll say, the light's too bright coming in from the window, if you ask me how I feel, right? So I love that you go back, you move into the body.
Yep. Yeah. It satisfies two things. One, it brings them back to this moment, right? So instead of how do I feel, and then they're trying to immediately assess all their relationships or the project they're working on, it brings them back to this moment of right here, right now. And then by focusing on the body, it's something they can immediately assess in real time and influence. So when I tell them, okay, go to your body, start at your feet. Are you clenching the ground with your toes right now?
I just noticed I am.
Right? Yeah. And so wiggle your toes, relax your toes a little bit.
I'm doing that. Feels good.
Yeah. Move up to your calves and your thighs.
And my hips, like how I kind of hold on, right?
Yeah.
And like brace.
And so slowly moving up your body, you're assessing each zone, right? your core. The core is a big one. Almost every time I do this with a client and we get to the core, I'm like, yeah, I'm like flexing my core for some reason right now.
Yeah, doing that right
Yeah.
now.
And so
Just breathes into that.
I'll say, just stick it out. Have a big baby belly. You know? Just like a little kid.
Belly.
A little Buddha belly. You know? Just kind of rub it for a second. Like, yeah, it feels good to relax. You've literally just shifted your system, right? Because you are practicing mindfulness by being in this moment. You are identifying areas of tension physically, and you are literally the person that is alleviating that tension. So in real time, you're shifting your system. So that's like
I love that.
primary tools that
I love that. Well, and I love that you also, we in the couples class, and we'll talk about that and just with us too, what we're noticing. And in the couples class last night, you talked about this intensity and autonomic nervous system, or ANS intensity scale that you created to help people while they're bringing their awareness to their body to start to notice the intensity level of the trigger. Do you want to speak to that? I thought that was really helpful.
Sure. So anytime we're triggered, at least for most people, and I know 100% with me, if I'm triggered in that moment, I perceive it as a 10, right? Scale of 1 to 10. It's like, boom, I'm triggered. And it's the worst thing ever. You know, I can't believe this is going on. So the intensity scale, what it does is it helps give us perspective on the situation or on the trigger. And so prior to the trigger, I want to think a little bit about, okay, scale of 1 to 10, when have I been the most triggered in my entire life, right? Whether it's anger, sadness, fear, whatever. And there could be many 10s, right? So like in real time, I'm having difficulty in trouble with a relationship, close personal relationship. It's not Candice.
It's a family member.
It's a family member. But and so I have a lot of 10s, if you will, in my history with this person. And so I literally just pick one. Now I have a bar, I have a high water mark. So in this moment, because that's my trigger of anger, right? I know that one. So now throughout my day, you know, if Candice says something that's triggering to me, yeah, I immediately may go there, but I say to myself, okay, scale of 1 to 10 compared to my 10 on being triggered. Oh, this is like a 4, you know, and immediately I can feel it in my body. It will shift because I've immediately gained perspective. Instead of it just being perceived as a 10, I'm changing that perception to something more accurate.
You had also said in one of our discussions about this, obviously offline, that if you don't identify, okay, this is a 10, so that you can create perspective, then you literally will go from the situation at hand with a person, and then your brain just starts to remember everything that person's ever done. So it's kind of going down this rabbit hole of hell.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
so if you can stop yourself and say, okay, where are we at? You know, Candice just interrupted me, you know, because that one few nights ago when I interrupted you and I could tell you were frustrated, you know, kind of doing that where it's like, okay, this is like a 3 compared to your 10 with a family member. Yeah.
So what Candice is talking about there is kind of how our brain works, you know, with the trigger and significant memories, traumatic memories, is because we have not resolved a lot of these traumas. It's like an open-ended question in our brain, right? And so when we're triggered and we go into that fight or flight response, if we don't immediately start putting some perspective on it and bring us back to this current moment with, okay, compared to this and that, our brain literally is on constant search trying to find similarities in the past of when we have resolved a problem like this before, right? And so that's where rumination happens. You know, it's literally the pinwheel spinning constantly. And that's why you suddenly remember, oh yeah, 2 weeks ago you said this, and a month ago you said that, and da-da-da. And because it's literally just how the brain works in trying to resolve trauma.
Well, and let's talk about that too. So love the couples class we're doing with same and mixed neurotype couples. We have folks from all over. We're so thankful. For those that are listening, I will post it again, the flyer. I've had people reach out on LinkedIn saying, oh my gosh, when I've talked about what we're doing, wanting to be a part of it. But we're talking right now about communication and different communication styles.
Mm-hmm.
And in my work for the last, oh my gosh, close to 20 years, just noticing that with same or mixed neurotype couples, there are different types of communicators. So monologuers, right?
Yeah.
Rejectors, passive listeners, for instance. I came up with a list of 7. And what we're noticing is that, now this could be anyone too. It's not just individuals who are neurodifferent. It's anyone. It's a non-neurodifferent person who might be in a mixed neurotype relationship, right?
Yeah.
You and I have different neurodifferences. And, you're a passive listener oftentimes, right? I can be a monologuer. I'm a connector, right? There's things we could both be rejectors in our communication. But what you and I talk about with couples is that foundational to the way that we communicate with our partner is what is going on inside our body, which is how's our heart rate? How's our digestive system? What's going on with our breath, right? Which again is just the foundation to the autonomic nervous system, which again, when we talk about neurodifferent individuals, it's dysregulated. I mean, there's plenty of research that shows that it's dysregulated. So one of the things that you and I talked about, along with the tools that you just suggested, is how to take a time out. Right?
Yeah, timeouts are critical. A proper timeout is critical.
So one of the things that I would think it would be really effective to talk about for couples listening, and again, you can use this with loved ones. It doesn't have to be just in a relationship. It could be at work. If you're at work and you find that you're getting activated, meaning emotionally dysregulated, which again can happen so easily.
Yeah.
How can you take a proper time out? And one of the things that you and I have learned long time ago, when we were really in conflict, and I think this was right around the time of my diagnosis when we learned this one. But a timeout essentially is a way for both people to de-escalate.
Yeah.
One of the things that I used to do is you would run, so you would flight, and I would fight. I would claws out, not literally, but I would want to kind of cling. I was like a stage 5 clinger because I know I have such strong rejection sensitive dysphoria that it would physically feel traumatic to have you leave.
Yeah.
I felt, just the perceived and real sense of rejection was overwhelming. So then as we've learned this, and now especially being able to put words and understanding through the brain and body process, when you say we've got to move our bodies to actually regulate, we both now have an easier time saying, I need a timeout. Or I'll say to you, do you need to move? Because that's kind of your thing, right? Even if you're pacing. But a timeout, it's not just I need a timeout or I need a moment or I need a break. Sometimes the signal, if we don't have words and it's a quiet signal or respectful signal.
Yeah, a little timeout signal.
Especially for those that have a hard time with words or the other person, it feels really intense. And then saying, I love you. I'm committed to us. I'm going to go for a walk for 20 minutes. I'll be back and let's try this again.
Yeah.
At first, I remember when we tried that, it was hard. You were definitely better at it than me, saying I love you, because I would just be like, fuck you, excuse my language, but that's the reality. Now I'm able to do it too. It's hard. So I want to really just validate that for folks. When my emotions are really high and I'm at a high level of emotional dysregulation, my brain, the way it works, it's very hard to say that. I've done a lot of work around that over the last 2 months due to some health issues that have been a true gift in my life to change the way that I've been functioning, to where I get it now, because I would stay in the ring way too long when I actually needed to move a lot sooner than you did. I have learned that about my nervous system, that I actually am, I get dysregulated probably, I feel like, faster in a heated discussion. But what was happening is I would just stay in it and ignore it, that interoception. I wasn't listening to my body at all. So now when we take a time out, you and I, what works for us, we move into texting. We don't encourage folks to do this. We just encourage you, if you can, just stop the communication, go take a break so that you can de-escalate. We give it some time, and then we're able to communicate, not verbally, but texting has been good for you and I. We're not saying that works for everybody. Things can be very misconstrued in text, but I know that I feel a lot safer when I'm able to do a resolution through text. Then we can come back and we both will actually say, I'm sorry for my part in the miscommunication, the misunderstanding, the shit that just happened. And we work it out. And sometimes it takes multiple timeouts.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes pulling out our Gottman workbook to literally walk through the script of how to resolve conflict, but we're able to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that repair attempt, right? When we come back and saying, I'm sorry for my part in the misunderstanding or my part in the miscommunication. Just using those two descriptors, the misunderstanding or the miscommunication, it's easy to own, right? And it's not putting blame on the other person. And it's also not topic specific, right? So, because I may not feel like I'm responsible for part of the issue, but I know that I'm responsible for part of the misunderstanding or miscommunication, right? So it's kind of a gentle way to start leaning back into the conversation.
Sure.
Yeah.
And there are times, I do want to say this, and we'll reiterate this with our couples that we're, doing the class with. There are times where you or I might do something and the other person isn't doing anything. So where that requires an apology, but there also isn't necessarily a timeout that happens. It's just, there might be a rift and the other person might come back and say, hey, I'm sorry that my tone was, sharp. One of the things that I also tell people is intention does not equal impact. So my intention may not be to come across as sharp, nor yours, because you can be sharp with me as well. But the impact is significant. And that's where the apology comes in, because there's an impact. And so we've had couples in same or mixed neurotype relationships that will say, well, what if I don't know what I'm sorry for? Like, what if I legitimately not know why I'm apologizing? And that's where it's like, if your partner has been impacted and they're communicating that to you, whether they're communicating in writing or, letting you know through gesture or, their body language or verbally, there's an impact. So the impact is what you're actually acknowledging.
Absolutely.
Your intention is different from the impact. So there needs to be an acknowledgement of that. So I also want to say that humor has saved us. You and I have totally lightened up. I do want to say that for someone that's been in therapy since I was 14, and I'll be 49 in 2 weeks.
Really? I knew it was her birthday.
You're 50. I just lost my train of thought. No, I didn't. I've realized, as someone who literally probably just 2 months ago was diagnosed with something that was pretty it was literally life-threatening. Had a wake-up call where it was like, my stress level has literally caused this issue. Well, it was multiple issues. And I've got to do something more than I've been doing. Because again, I have had so much trauma in my life, not just from childhood sexual abuse as a young human, but also being neurodifferent and experiencing the world and all the other traumas that I've experienced, and my stress level, which is so common for neurodifferent folks, there's no way I would have survived if I kept, I mean, the doctor, I think back and I get kind of emotional when I think about how serious he was and me crying in his office thinking, holy shit, right? Like this is a big deal. And then saying to you afterwards, this is serious, isn't it? And you're like, yeah. Like I don't think I was fully aware of how serious my level of stress had taken a toll on my body. And so one of the things I want to say, and I'm just planting a seed because we will talk about it in future podcasts, is that I not only sought out therapy yet again, right? So going on 30 years of therapy, but I also am a very intuitive person and knew I needed to go into my body. So I sought out Reiki healers. Reiki is energy work, sound bowl healing. I sought out plant medicine, and I decreased my workload.
Ayurvedic diet.
An Ayurvedic, very strict, more than vegan diet, following the doctor's orders strictly through elimination. And I'm still on the healing process. I mean, I'm hopeful. The last procedure I had just this past Wednesday, so 2 days ago, very, very hopeful about my trajectory. And I get to stay on this path because one of the things I know about myself historically is that, and I do think a lot of those of us that are neurodifferent tend to do this, where it has to get so bad before we do something. And we need validation from other people to actually say, okay, I'm going to actually take care of myself. I don't think we're taught how to take care of ourselves as kids, especially those of us that go under the radar. I mean, I was diagnosed 5 years ago. So it's like, you try and figure it out. I remember being headbanging and being very dysregulated, screaming meltdowns and assaulting my siblings and hiding in my closet because everything was just too much. So I've had that dysregulation for so long. But then knowing now that, oh my gosh, like I have found these beautiful holistic healing methods that work, that actually have really helped you and I, because you and I have both started to do that, the sound bowl healing, the plant medicine, where I will say having that holistic healing, those methods of healing that go back to your lineage, your like Eastern medicine and holistic ways, the origins of healing, have also really helped us slow our processes down, where it's rare now that you and I even get to a level where there's a meltdown happening.
Daily life is dramatically different for sure.
It is. I love it.
It's been such a, again, awesome experience to literally be in, I don't want to say dire straits, but a very serious situation with your health. And within a month,
2 months.
2 months, like literally being almost completely healed. And again, these are 90% natural processes, original healing.
And not being completely out of the woods, but definitely having like truly almost like a miracle happen, where it's amazing, right? That it does work. Like everything that mindfulness talks about and breath work talks about, because that's what I've done. Mindfulness, meditation, breath work, exercise, so moving my body, changing my diet, making sure I'm sleeping, right? Then working with healers almost every day, like doing so much work every single day, right? Cranial sacral, and literally doing acupuncture, and again, all that. And then you and I also every single day making our relationship a top priority, making my relationship with myself the number one priority, because I've never done that. I've been amazing at helping others heal at my own expense. Truly. We have an incredible healing center. And now waking up to, I get to help myself heal. And then it's you being inspired, like, wow, you get to help yourself heal. And then, wow, as a couple, we get to do this together. Wow, we get to do this every day, and doing it every day. You know, that's something that we've been able to really shine light on for couples. Is it starts with me, it starts with you, then we work together. I can't just go to the gym once a week and think I'm going to have this amazing body. And anyone that wants abs, it's all in your diet. I've learned that because just changing my diet has literally given me abs. I'm not like, it's just bizarre. You always would say that, be like, what kind of sit-ups can I do? You know, just having that body dysmorphia. And now I'm like, oh, you're right. You've been saying that for the last 12 years. It is in my diet.
Yeah.
You know, but again, just eating my feelings, you know, just not getting enough sleep in the past, like all that has actually, all that would add to my autistic traits. It in terms of intensifying my traits.
Oh, for sure.
I'm still autistic. I'm still ADHD. I love the beauty that my brain brings me. You know, I just love the magic that my beauty brings to me and the strengths that I have because of that. And I also know that if I'm not doing all of these things to show up to my own party and take care of myself, it exacerbates everything. And then if you're not doing that too, it exacerbates your PTSD, your depression, and then you and I collide.
Yeah. We both have to increase our own capacity, right? And by doing all these things, that's what's happening is we're increasing our capacity, our bandwidth, our ability to navigate life.
Yeah.
So I want to connect.
Yeah, let's connect it
earlier.
Okay.
To one thing that wasn't mentioned. So earlier in the podcast, we said you must satisfy the biology before you can influence the psychology. And that was based upon we're triggered. We have this dump of adrenaline. Adrenaline makes us move. But if we don't move, we ruminate, right? And all this stuff happens. All this triggering happens. The conversation moves into an argument. The argument increases speed, right? Like anytime you're talking fast, it's no longer a discussion, it's an argument, and you're not even hearing each other. But the point is, when we get triggered and we feel that rush of adrenaline because we're charged, we must move. You literally need to physically get up and start moving your body. That is satisfying the biology before you can start to have any chance at influencing the psychology. Hence the timeout. Right?
Hence walking, like you will literally pace back and forth if you need to, or you'll say, hey, I'm just going to go for a walk, or I'm going to go for a drive. We don't encourage a drive. If you're so activated, we don't want road rage or accidents. But like you said, moving, I love that that's an awareness for both of us, you know, and even, and definitely going into a separate room if you're not going to leave, but telling the other person, because at least one person is going to be rejection sensitive and have fear of abandonment, which will even shoot them through the roof of sympathetic. So letting your loved one know, I love you, I'm committed to us, I'm going, I will be back in, is so crucial.
Yeah.
And then move, stop talking, move, stop the argument, because that's where people really get in trouble if they continue to talk. So yeah. What's next on the horizon for us here, Chris, at Namaste?
Construction project.
Because
we're opening up our space and creating a larger group healing area, I guess. Space, we're going to call it.
We've been doing intensives where people will fly in from all over. We just had someone who's been with us for the last 2 full weeks. So we do intensives for folks that have significant trauma, there's all kinds of trauma. We also work with folks that have all kinds of issues related to sex, whether it's infidelity or compulsive sexual, out of control sexual behavior, or even crossing over into escalations of addiction, sex offending. So we do deep work with heavy issues, and we're also moving into a more enlightened space. So we will continue to do those intensives with folks that need our help and our healing at that level. And through my own healing process and getting clear on what also gets to happen, yeah, we're expanding so that we can have sound bowl healing. We can have women's healing retreats where we connect them to their divine feminine and do chakra energy healing and Reiki energy healing and sound bowl healing, and men's retreats as well to connect men with their divine masculine too. There's too much toxic masculine and feminine in our world, and it's just collided. So we want to move people into holistic healing where they can really connect with that element, that aspect of the divine in me, honoring the divine in you, the namaste.
Yeah.
Truly
embodying
the divine in me, the light in me sees and honors the light in you, which is divine masculine feminine, and help people move out of the trenches and into that higher vibration. So that is what's on the horizon for us here at Namaste Center for Healing. And then who knows, the world is wide open.
It is wide open.
So thank you for being on this journey with me, my love.
Thank you for having me in your life and choosing me.
Oh my gosh, I love you. All right, sweet souls, please be tender with your sweet selves as you go out into your world. It starts with you. Be tender with yourselves. The only way we can truly love another person is by loving ourselves. So let's start there. Let's love ourselves more, find ways to be tender with our sweet selves and tender with other people. And until next time, I love all of you so much. I'm sending you love and light. Namaste.